Perfect. Okay, very good. Welcome everybody to this next webinar of us, and I think it's the last of the series of this year. So welcome. Thanks everybody for joining. Today's topic will be Kube ESG. So we have invited our partner Carbon to present this or to do the heavy lifting basically today. They are the technology partner behind Kube ESG. I think they will explain a lot more about this in a second. Timing of the webinar is good. I think 2025 has been a special year in terms of sustainability. I think most of you are maybe even sick of the word omnibus, but the only good thing about the omnibus is that probably it makes us think a little bit on why do we need sustainability data and why is it important? And a lot of stakeholders still consider it important. And so one of those stakeholders is the banks, and they have launched together with their partners Kube ESG. So maybe quick words on the presenters of today. Myself, I'm Ines from Carbon+Alt+Delete. For those who don't know us yet, we are a carbon accounting tool. So we help companies basically calculate their carbon footprint, but also do the analysis part. So target setting, mitigation planning, and so on. We work with sustainability consultants. Most of you in the audience are consultants. So of course, this topic is for you. As I said, we invited Jens, co-founder of Caromia. Don't know if you want to say a quick word about yourself, Jens.
Yeah, hey Ines, hey everyone. My name is Jens. I'm one of the co-founders of Caromia. I'm very happy to be here to share a bit more details on Kube ESG. Very much looking forward to this.
Very good. Thank you for joining, Jens. We appreciate it. Very good. Maybe some housekeeping rules, even though we're only 50 today as it's a local webinar, we have still switched off your camera and muted you by default. Don't take it personal, but don't hesitate to interact through the chat. You can use the Q&A section or the comments. It's maybe better to use the Q&A section because there you can upvote questions. So we should have some time at the end to upvote or to cover the questions. So don't hesitate to post all of the questions that you may have for us or for Caromia in the chat. Very good. And maybe before starting, given the people that signed up, I guess the whole marketing campaign of Kube worked and it triggered some interest, but it might be interesting to know, like, what is your experience so far with Kube ESG? If you have just heard about it, or maybe not even yet, but you're just curious about every webinar we organize. If your clients maybe already asked about it, or if you've already used it, maybe for your client or for your own company. We have this Mentimeter. You can either scan the code or go to the website, and I think I will also post the link in the chat. So let's maybe move to, perfect, it's already coming in. Question. Answers are coming in, but I think it's already pretty clear that a lot of you heard about it. That means that the launch went pretty well, but that you're probably all very curious about what it is actually about because nobody or except two have already used it. Very good, perfect. So on the agenda of today, we will present Kube, the what, why, how. Or I say we, but Jens is actually going to do that heavy lifting. He is also so kind to give a live demo, very curious about this. And then we'll have a quick word also on what this means for consultants. And we should have time as well to cover the Q&A. So again, don't hesitate to ask your questions. And with that, happy to give the floor to Jens.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ines, for that. I'm gonna try to share my screen. Voila. So quick word on everything that I will share, and maybe before we dive in, maybe also want to establish that we're very happy to do this with partners. So Caromia is only a small, not insignificant party in having supported this launch, but none of this would have been possible without Isabel and Febelfin, so the sector federation of the Belgian banks, in order to make this happen. And this was also at the initiative of Belgium's biggest banks, and so the four of them being BNP Paribas Fortis, ING, Belfius, and KBC. So they are the driving force behind this. And here I have the pleasure of sharing kind of the fruits of the hard labor of many, many people involved. And so I'm very excited to be here and to share a bit more about Cube ESG. Now, the reason why all of this started is because companies will be required or will be asked to share ESG data with many different stakeholders. So, I mean, Ines already referred to the word that we don't like to call out anymore, but because of the political landscape, has been quite a roller coaster. Nonetheless, the need for ESG data is going to increase still. So there's many different reasons for that. Because your customers, so your supplier to customers, they will be asking for this. Consumers, they want to consume from stable business. I mean, I don't need to explain any of this. So it's kind of the regulator that takes a step back these days, but it's also insurance companies that will step it up in the future, but also banks. And so, especially after the political tsunami, it becomes even more important to have a quite structured approach to this, because we'll need to, let's say, rely a lot more on the voluntary reporting for companies in order to serve the need for ESG data from companies, right? So that is really why the banks have really taken that initiative to help companies in getting away from the tons of different Excels that you're confronted with today, is different forms that people need to fill in left and right, to really start focusing on the kind of do it once and then be done with it. And that was really the philosophy of what we put in place, really to solve that problem into the market, right? So there's basically two routes for companies to report on ESG. And the thresholds, basically there's two big categories. That threshold is obviously the one that's still being debated, not finalized, but if we are kind of, if you put it into two big categories, and you have it on the left, smaller companies, and then on the right, and you have the bigger companies. On the left hand side, below 1,000 employees. So I mean, take that with a pinch of salt if you're gonna rewatch this in a replay mode, and this might not be 100% accurate anymore, but you're basically reporting on a voluntary basis. Then you're going to do that using the VSME standard, and that's typically what companies then use. You can still go for the more complex ESRS framework. That's all possible, right? But it is on a voluntary basis by default, and there's also no need to have it assured. While if you have to do reporting, then you're focusing on the ESRS. The simplifications and those the slides were made last week, so simplifications are here. As the 1,200 data points there, that's no longer accurate, as the SRS have been simplified, but it still follows the principle of the double materiality assessment and insurance that is required, right? So here today, I really want to focus on that VSME standard, which has also been adopted in Belgium as kind of the maximum data cap, so the data cap that can be requested from companies and that are expected to report on ESG. And so that's already in the Belgian law today. And so Cube ESG was launched mid-November, so about 2 weeks ago. It was an event at Fabelfin. So Fabelfin was so kind to host the event, and that was actually supported by many, many different stakeholders. And so it was not only Fabelfin, but it was also Minister Simonet, and that was there. But then the representatives from VOCA, from ACT, many different stakeholders within the industry, many different sector federations, really that really support this initiative, right? To really help companies on making it very simple and very pragmatic. So that was a big launch, and that's just the beginning for the further adoption of Cube in the market. So maybe a step back. Why is it that this was launched, and so why are the banks taking this initiative? I think it's kind of a balance between two things. Here on the left-hand side, we have an earlier article from last month on in the Tate, basically saying that banks they can actually do a bit more and to with their climate ambitions, but then also highlighting the need for ESG data because the biggest impact of a bank is not necessarily by having their employees switch to a greener fleet, but it's really on how they use their money, those resources, and how they invest, how they provide loans into the market. That's how they have the biggest impact. In order to measure that impact, obviously you need data, you need information, right? So that's really driving the sustainability agenda, why the banks love to quantify that more. But on the other hand, there's also the risk aspect because unfortunately climate change is real, it is happening, and it also means that that brings with it quite important and significant risks. Risks that can manifest themselves in kind of the very acute physical situation, but also it also means that certain industries they will need to undergo quite a transformation in order to adapt to new realities, right? And that's what's important to be aware of, especially when you, as a bank, are going to engage with a company on a 10, 15, 20-year loan. So you definitely want to make sure that those companies, they are heading in the right direction, right? And that's also what the European Bank Authority is putting forward, that banks, they need to start measuring this more actively, right? So I think it's going to be a mix between those two key drivers that has really they provided that trigger for the banks and to launch this. So here we are then today with Cube ESG specifically for SMEs, and so how it works is quite simple, right? So it's the one place where an SME can get their VSME report and then also can easily share that with different stakeholders. And so it really follows the only once principle, and that is done by following the VSME standard. So basically through Cube ESG, companies get a VSME report. And so what is also great is that for the first year, there's going to be AI there to support and to help companies really in getting that report filled in a quite automatic manner. So you don't need to be a big expert on ESG nor on VSME and all of those more complex elements, right? Because AI will actually help companies in order to fill that. And the key power of this is that Cube is really an ecosystem, right? It makes it very easy then to share with the full consent of the company, right? To share that data with trusted sources, the partners really of those businesses. And so initially it will be the banks that will be using Cube ESG to collect the ESG data from their customers, but it's also going to be the investment companies, the public investment companies like Pinball Entrepreneur, PNV, and more that will be joining quite soon as well in collecting the ESG data from their portfolio companies. And in the end, there will be many more types of companies. And so because we see that there are quite a number of organizations and that are keen on, or that basically are exchanging ESG data today, then this would be also the more efficient way of doing so. So Cube ESG, following the VSME standard, makes it very easy for SMEs to get a report, to then also easily share it. But it's not just SMEs that can use it, also larger companies can put their ESG data on there, so to then easily share that with the different stakeholders. I saw in the little poll that there were very few people that have actually tried it and that have seen it in action. So that's definitely something that I can tackle here today with you. So I will show you a demo, but there's also a very easy way for you to explore this yourself. So you can actually go to Cube, log in, and then get your VSME report filled in, and then share that with the banks. There is one important side mark here or side note, which is that you need to be the legal representative of the company in order to do this. So if you're not the legal representative, you kind of need to be the legal representative to then be able to generate that report. So that's quite an important detail. So if you're not that person, then please go and ask that person to actually start and to do this. This is a screenshot of what it actually looks like, but then I'm just going to share my switch screens, and then I'll actually show it to you in action. How about that? Up. And switch. Voila. Just going to refresh to make sure that my session is still active. Yes. Okay. So here, maybe I can log out and actually show you the journey, right? Because it's quite simple. So I'm going to log in with it's me. Up. Scanning the QR codes. I mean, we all know how it's me works. And then really I get into the environment of Caromia, right? So here I'm the legal representative of Caromia, and you can actually see that we already have a complete report, and that we are in the mode of sharing this with KBC, for example. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new report, just for the sake of showing to you how it works. So it's quite simple. The button actually going in now. And we're filling in a few parameters in order to fill the report. So how many people work in the company? Well, here I'm going to report on 2024. In 2024, Caromia was still a rather small team. I think we had about 5 people on average, but anyhow, let's click next because it's a data point that will be fixed later on. So the display name, so that's how we want to be called. Why do we make a distinction between the display name and the actual enterprise name? Because if you then also want to use this in external communication, the name of the company is not always your brand name, right? So we kind of make a distinction between that. But here we're going to do this on an individual basis because, I mean, we're just, it's basically that, right? Up, voila. And this is our website. So the website is also going to be used for helping to pre-fill the report later on. So here I'm going to start a new report. And here we are. So this is still a draft. We're at 9% complete. We have it aligned on fiscal year 2024 because that's where we have the finalized data. And then here you can actually see the full structure of the VSME report. So it's structured in the general disclosure, environmental, social, and governance. What you'll notice is that by default, the system is going to pre-fill both the basic and the comprehensive module. So we're going to focus on the full VSME, even if you don't need to do the full VSME, because AI will actually do all the heavy lifting. And if you have the information to fill it in, then why don't fill it in? Like it's so that makes it, let's say, even more robust and more scalable, because nothing is worse than just saying I'm gonna limit my scope to then in the end be confronted mid-year like someone is in need to have the comprehensive module 2, right? I didn't fit it in the first time, so by default we advise everyone to go for the full scope. So in the middle section, then you see all the different data points, right? But there are not that many that are filled. So about 38% of the first section is filled. But there's the auto-generate. And the auto-generate, that's really where we use the power of AI in order to fill the report. So it's quite simple. You can add info. And there's the good news is that in order to fill a VSME report, at least the basics, you don't need to have too many special things. There's a lot of information which is already available within the company. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the example of Caromia. So there are a few documents that we have. I mean, we're still a young company. There's not that much that we have, but we have our Rising Stars, our Deloitte Rising Star application that I'll use in order to generate this report. We have a management report with our financials in there. And then Ines was so kind to provide a demo report from Carbon+Alt+Delete with some greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm going to upload these 4 documents in order to then get the VSME report generated by the system. So that's about it. I'm going to start auto-generating. So what the system will now do is going to pick up on all of these documents, right? And you see that the number of documents is also increasing here because it's going to pick up on all the official documents as well, which are added to the pile because it goes and fetches all of those too. And then it's going to, in parallel, also start researching the company. So it's going to look at our website, all the information which is available there, and all of that info that can be found. And so those 2 aspects are now run in parallel. Those 2 analyses are now running in parallel to create a very good common understanding of who the heck is Caromia, right? So it's going to take all those insights and is going to create that understanding. Then once this is done, it's going to take maybe another minute or so. Then it's going to start doing all of the reasoning and all of the analysis on the different data points, and it's going to try and complete as many as possible. And as this is happening, you will then actually start to see the completion rate increasing and increasing in order to get the report fully filled. On average, I think I did the test a couple of days ago. I think it took about 17 minutes or so to do the full analysis and then to pre-fill the report. So what we can do is we can actually get back to this in a few minutes, but I can actually switch to having a closer look at a completed report so that we can actually take a closer look together, right? So I'll leave this running, but I'll basically focus here on a completed report. So done this in our test environment, as you can see here, but it's basically the same. So what is then actually filled here? So it's, I mean, you recognize the VSME standard, so there's a lot of the basic information in there, some financial information, NASDAQ codes, and number of employees, our addresses, and so our official address, but then also the office and which is the winter circus that we're in. So all of that information is being picked up from the sources that were used. Then on our business models, so what are the products that we have? And so double materiality assessments, ESRS report, VSME. So it's all being picked up from those documents, right? So here on the left hand, sorry, that's the right hand side. You can actually always identify where that information was coming from. So there's always the mentioning of the different sources that were used. So here, in order to identify the different products and services that we offer, it looks at the Rising Star pitch, and it also picks up on the pages, but then it also found some good information on this on our website, right? And that's kind of the feedback that we get with every data point of how it was filled, where the information was coming from. So that brings that full clarity and traceability on how the report was generated. So number of suppliers, customers, partners, For example, it picked up on Carbon+Alt+Delete being a partner as well, right? So all of these things are being picked up, and it does not matter in what kind of format that the information is available, the system will pick it up. So as we mentioned before, this was so kind to help give some. I mean, I don't think it was super accurate, right? And that's the data
No, it
that we
was more
got.
for a production company indeed, so it's not
Voila.
completely accurate.
So, but that is fine. So in the end, we have some data that we could work with as well that were uploaded. So it was the analysis that was uploaded, and then basically it's also filling in the energy consumption that was used, and because there was then also that scope calculation, all of that information is then being picked up and is then also being filled. And then you can actually go in and then you can see that this was being picked up from the Caromia example, and that data was actually found on page 20 in the report that Ines provided us. And then here the same, right? And then this was, for example, picked up from page 19, all of the numbers that are included here. So that's really how the system works, and it's going to complete all of the information that it can find, that it can retrieve in order to complete the report. So, yes.
There are already a few questions in the chat, but maybe let's leave them for later. But a question that I sometimes get from our clients is if we integrate with Kube or with Caromia, but this basically shows that it's not necessary, that we can use the output of Carbon+Delete and basically just upload it in Kube in this case.
Yeah, makes it very easy, intuitive, and if all of a sudden Carbon+Delete decides to generate the reports in Japanese, right? That would be totally fine. Just upload it how you have it, and that will then be processed and will be put into the report. So voilà. That's a bit in a nutshell how it works. Perhaps I can go back to my slides. Voilà. So if you then want to try it yourself, like I mentioned, you can easily do this. Obviously, here when you have a client, when you're doing this not for your own company, but you're doing this for someone else, then it's also quite easy in a sense, right? So either it's the legal representative of the company that will kind of get the consultant on board, or for the partners who are already familiar with Caromia and already use Caromia, then basically you can also go through the partner portal and fully prepare that from there on as well, and basically put it in Kube for sure. So what does this mean for you? So I think a very important key insight that I want to share here today is that I assume that many of you are carbon experts, given the talk that we have here with Carbon+Delete. What I think is very important moving forward is that we push this a bit further into really becoming a bit more full stack sustainability. Why? Because many companies will be requested to get to that VSME report. They will be very kindly asked and nudged by many different stakeholders that are already connected on Kube and that will connect to Kube in order to get their data in there. So I think it's going to be quite crucial to not stop at the carbon footprint analysis, which is obviously very important and very key and crucial, but it's going to be very important to push it all the way to that VSME report and to do it in Kube. Because in a sense, there's many things that businesses will need in order to become a bit more competitive and a bit more resilient as things are changing, and they're changing super fast, right? We kind of see it in three different steps or categories. It's good to understand. kind of your situation. And so carbon footprint is very important. There's kind of the piece in the middle, right? But then what we also see is an increased importance for a good understanding of your physical assets and to have them properly geolocalized and mapped against local climate risks, proximity to biodiversity, and all those things, right? Because that's also important in your ESG reporting. And it's something that stakeholders are very keen on knowing because that makes risk assessments quite tangible, right? So going into that field, it's important and it's quite crucial as well if you want to do a proper reporting. So that's something that we also support with. But then once you have your proper understanding of your risk and your impacts, it's also quite important to be able to act on that, to have decarbonization plans, and to have a strategy moving forward. And we see that more and more that a report is not good enough anymore. There are quite a number of bigger companies out there that do require their suppliers to have a decarbonization plan, right? To make sure that they are also working on mainly their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, that there is a plan as well for them to move forward. So kind of becomes like your license to operate, in a sense that shows that you are taking the right steps. Benchmarking, it's always good to compare with peers and to see what others are doing to kind of know where you are and how competitive is your sustainability strategy. So all of those things, and they really are part of the bigger, more holistic approach to sustainability, of which the compliant report is obviously very important because that's kind of your ticket in, ticket in with your insurance company, ticket in with your supplier, sorry, your customer in that case, right? But with your bank investors. But that ticket in, that compliant report, it does not necessarily tell a great story because it's more a report for machines. It's not necessarily a report for humans. But that's why it's also important to think about the humans because it's change trajectory that we're on, right? And for that, we need the humans within the organization to help us get there. So that's why it's important to have that storytelling and that journey and that people can follow. So that's why we also focus on good branded reports, websites, etc., to help that communication part move forward. And so very important. Now, quick closing, and so on the launch. And so we launched it earlier about 2 weeks ago. Today we're doing this webinar, but in 2026, this thing will, let's say, more and more take off in a sense, right? Because many of the stakeholders will then also start using the Cube ESG for their data collection, right? So a lot more people will hear from it, will be invited to join, and will be asked to share their ESG report. And it's like I mentioned, it's the banks, but it's also the investment companies that will be joining the ecosystem, and many more. And also from our great partner Isabel, there will be a lot more communication, more general awareness on this in the next few months, so that everyone knows that this is basically the way to go. There's also good collaboration with many sector federations to also make the link there to basically get them also fully aware and involved into this great initiative. So why would you start now, today, already? Today, yesterday is always better, but why is it important? Well, it's to be prepared, right? Because once people start to ask for the report, it's quite easy to put in the report all the things that you already have today, the things that you're doing. I mean, that's the information that you have today. But if you want to already start showing a bit of leadership, if you want to, let's say, make sure that your report is considered to be above average, then it's good to be aware of what it is that you have to report and what you're not yet able to report on, because then you can start working on those things. And maybe there are going to be a few things that are quite easy to tackle, where you can like easily gain a few miles, and that's going to make you look like you're on top of it. But that you have less capacity to do that if you're in the rush of things, right? So that's why we always recommend companies like, I mean, don't let this linger on until someone asks you to do it, because then you're going to be in a rush of things, and then I mean, it's going to really look as is, right? So that's quite important. VSME, it's the way to go, as I mentioned before, and I think everyone here is going to be fully aligned on this, is that it's the only once principle. That's great. We do often hear from companies that, oh, VSME, like for my sector, the ratio is not on euros, but the ratio should be on square meter, because we're in real estate, or we're in hospitals, so it should be linked to the number of patients, etc. Right? All of these things, they're very relevant, right? All of that feedback. But I think here the benefit is that we're starting with the general approach, which we're going to fine tune and make it more relevant for all of the different types of businesses and different stakeholders. And so the general approach here, let's start with that one, right? And that's really where we're going to start gaining some efficiencies and some synergies before we start making it more complex. And so I think that's really great. And then my last plea for today is whatever you do, right? Even if it's not much, even if it's just a simple workshop, or you've already gone through the process and you've gotten your carbon footprint, get your VSME report, get it into Cube, right? Because that's going to make sure that it's going to be official. You're going to be ready for when that question comes, that you'll be able to report on that. So, that was basically my last big plea for today. Yes,
Thank you,
floors
Jens.
back
Very
to you.
interesting. It was actually the first time I saw it myself, Cube, because unfortunately I'm not a business owner. So it was nice to see, and nice to see how flexible it is. There's quite some questions already in the chat. Maybe you can already have a quick look while I'll quickly go to the last part, and then we can have plenty of time to cover those questions. So lastly, we want to quickly check what this means for consultants. Jens has already explained it a little bit, but apparently my slides are not all on unshared. Quickly checking. Voilà. Good. We have another Mentimeter. Apparently the last one was not working, or the code was not working, but the QR code was. We just want to check quickly, like, what do you think that it will mean for you as a consultant? Maybe you don't know yet, or maybe you don't think this Cube launch will change anything. Or maybe you think it will be less or more work or different work. Just curious to see what you think the impact will be on your work as a consultant. And normally this QR and the code should be working, so that means that we can go there and then we start getting in some answers. Right, I see quite some people answering different work. For example, the scope of the project is just an example, but very curious to see what you mean. So don't hesitate to put comments in the chat about what you mean by different work. And there's also some consultants that are answering that they think they will have less work as companies will do it themselves. And then quite a few that don't know yet or think not really an impact. Okay, very interesting. Okay, the less work is increasing by the meantime. Okay, good. So what do we think as Carbon+Alt+Delete? We basically think that Cube is just a new starting point for a new type of company. So what we think is that your work as a consultant will actually become more important. This is a new starting point for a new type of companies. companies that already have sustainability data. They are already working with consultants usually. As Jens has showed, you can actually upload that report and already use Kube. But it is also a new trigger for companies that are not yet doing anything around sustainability. And we, as a carbon tool, have seen in the last year that at least carbon is here to stay. And one of the reasons is stakeholder engagement. We see a lot of value chain engagement, asking companies asking their their suppliers, for carbon data. But we also see here that the banks are also a very important stakeholder, and so that it's just a new trigger for companies to get started. And then the idea stays the same. They need to have reliable data, credible data. They need to build a roadmap for the future. And for this, they will typically need an expert to support them in this. Maybe small companies even more because they have no resources to build this expertise in-house. So they will need to rely on that full stack as Jens mentioned. So we think this is a nice opportunity for consultants, but just the sustainability world in general, to make this a positive thing. We have some time left for Q&As. Maybe, Jens, you can share the last slide again so I can go to the question, because otherwise I think we will have this tunnel vision in Teams. Let's start with the Q&As. There is one question more about data privacy. Florian is asking what use of their data do companies consent to when they submit their data? It's like individual risk analysis, portfolio level analysis, if it's anonymized, sharing between banks and insurances. Don't know if you can share something about this.
Yeah, so no, it's a very good question. So so as you are creating your VSME report, right? Everything it remains your own data, right? So all of the data that's being used, it remains the property of the company. Everything that is actually written in the report, and so basically, remember I mentioned that we work with Carbon+Alt+Delete in our VSME report, right? If I then submit the report and I finalize that, and then I decide to share it in our example with KBC, it means that KBC will be able to see that that we collaborate, right? The thing is that KBC will only be able to see this when they need that data and when they need to go in and request it. So basically, what we're saying is that KBC, for them, the door is open to enter and to basically receive the information which is in the VSME report. So in a sense, you also decide and you control what you want to say. It's not that because a certain data point is in the VSME report that you also have to report it. There's actually a way that you can exclude information and you say, look, this is confidential, we don't want to disclose this, which is very often the case, right? So I would say that's the important check that you still need to do as a business owner, that if you use a lot of internal information to generate the report, that there might be some information in there and that ends up in the draft of the report where you say like, I prefer this information not to be known, right? Then simply remove it. That's totally fine. So no one is forcing you to share any trade secrets, right? And you remain in control because it's basically the data is in your vault, is in your system, right? And you decide who is allowed to read it. So that's basically the entire mechanism which is set up. So Florian, I hope that answered your question.
All right. Interesting. Then there is also a question about like what data the AI is using. You showed the example where you uploaded the website. Is this the only public data that the AI is screening, basically the data you provide, or is it just screening the web in general?
Yeah, so so there obviously it's going to rely a lot on the the internal information which is being shared about the company, but then there's also official data sources and where you already published, like the National Bank, etc. Right? So those are also trusted sources which are being used in order to generate the report. And so that's really linked to the company itself. However, there's like many other types of knowledge which are being used, which the AI relies on, which is the inventory of flood risks, from rivers, from rain, etc. Like there's a lot of that common knowledge, which is also used in order to fill the report, but that's not necessarily linked one-on-one with the company itself, right? So that's really then how the system works. So it's not going to scan HLN to see what was written about the company. No, that's not how it works. So it's going to link it back to either your website, your own documents, or the trusted sources really to fill the reports.
All right, clear. And on trusted like sources, is there an idea on how banks, as end users, will manage non-verified information or like non-audited information, like a
Yeah.
carbon footprint, for example?
Yes, so clearly a VSME report is done on a voluntary basis. And so there's no requirement to get it assured to get an auditor to sign off on this. And so this is not the case. Um, What is important in the entire setup is that it is the business owner that will still, in full good faith, submit and have it signed, set up through its me that this is my official report, and based on the information that I have, this is basically in full good faith in the what I can share and what I believe to be true about my business, right? So that's really how the mechanism is set up. It is not that people will look at this with a magnifying glass and will say like, "Oh, here you put this," because everyone realizes that this is going to be the starting point for a lot of businesses, right? And that a lot of knowledge needs to be gained, a lot of insights, right? So we're still at the very it's not entirely true, but for a lot of companies, this is going to be the very first, let's say, real ESG interaction, right? So there is going to be a high maturity curve that will need to be walked on in the next couple of years. And so, at least based on how we interact with all of the partners here, that everyone is fully aware of this, right? And no one is going to look at this is going to be everyone is fully on board that we need to help people, right? So this is really much the philosophy here that we're also pursuing. It's about helping people making those first steps.
Yes, it's an entry point, not an end point.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, we see
exactly.
that as in carbon accounting as well. A lot of companies start with scope 1 and 2, but very quickly they gain a maturity and they look at scope 3 as
Hmm.
well. So it's the
Hmm.
same for the rest of the topics. There is a question as well on there's a lot of focus on reporting, while the CSRD mindset was actually to engage your stakeholders to understand and assess the impacts, the risk, opportunities. In the overview of the solution, Christelle sees that AI is once again positioned as like the solution to solve SMEs' lack of resources. Do you consider the use of AI as a replacement of stakeholder engagement and drive necessarily change in organizations which need to rethink their business model?
Mm,
I
it's a
think,
fair
yeah, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
It's a fair question, right? And so the way that we look at this is on the one hand that there is so much knowledge out there, so much scientific research that has been done, so many companies that have worked on all of these insights that, in fact, why don't we use those insights in helping companies kind of see through it, right, and kind of understand what is most important, right? And I think that's something that is very key and that can really help to accelerate things. But then on the flip side of it, you always need to decide what is most relevant and most important, right? So we can never exclude the human factor in this and to really cast a proper judgment, right? Because AI can only go as far as to kind of take the information and present it to you, but you as a company still need to decide what you do with it. And in order to do that, that's where you need human interactions. So I think the question of here, I can't see the full name of
Still.
who asked it, Christelle.
Mm.
It's also a very relevant one when it comes to the double materiality assessment, where AI can actually go much deeper into the entire analysis, but then it's stakeholders that in the end still need to decide what is going to be material. So we're not cutting out the people, we're just making it more focused and more efficient. And the whole reason as well why we launched or why we built our company is so that you spend less time on all the administration that basically AI is so much more efficient at, right? Understanding what needs to be in the report, understand what information that you have, and just map it, put it in there, right? So that's we really see it more as a help, as an aid, so that you can actually focus on what matters more. So
Mhm. Yes, and I think that's the idea behind both Caromia and Carbon+Delete is the more efficiently we can report and the less time we spend on this, the more resources are left to actually have an impact. Okay, then there is one additional question on the structuring of the data, because we all know that data that clients have is not always very structured. From what I understand, the structure doesn't matter that much, and AI is still always improving. But maybe you can say a word and if there's like a process needed to structure the data in order for Cube to understand the data.
so not so much. So what we see is that um, there is a lot of the information that needs to go into the VSME report. It can often be linked to information that the company already has, like your HR related information, but that's typically matched with the sociale balance. Then all of the information that you need to report on accidents, that's basically what you can find with your preventieverslagen, your IPDBW papers, etc. Right? So there's that match. When you need to report on your water consumption, it's in your water invoices. So same for electricity, right? So it is not that you need to pre-process that information. You basically can take, however, you can take the info as raw as you have it from that invoice, from that Excel where you're keeping track of a few numbers, right? So it is not as complex as people often think it is, right? Because especially on the VSME, you have the data somewhere already, maybe not in the format where you kind of have it ready to be, but then you just give it the way that you have it, and then the system will sort it out.
Okay, and maybe a follow-up question, like if you have uploaded a lot of files already and then did an initial run, can you upload additional files if you notice like maybe the information is not fully complete, but I do have more information, or do you need to start again?
No, so there's a limit to how many documents that you can upload. So because there's still a limit on the cost perspective, right? But within that limit, you can use the AI in order to continue to complete reports.
I think that's a good jump to the next question is how can Cube be GB free and continue to improve?
Yeah. So that's so today, and so it's Cube is free, and there's the launch offer from the stakeholders, from the banks, and to make the AI available for the first year. So in the first year, that AI assistant, the auto-generated I've shown you, that is available for the first year, and so that's basically how things have been agreed on so far. I do not have a crystal ball to kind of predict what that future setup then would look like, but for sure, um, there will always be that way for companies to do it and to basically have that reach, right?
Mhm.
So that's for sure the case. And then how we can improve? Well, we are continuously monitoring the usage. There's also a huge effort undertaken by Isabel, our partner in this, in reaching out to the different people that are participating talking to them, interviewing, learning from them, right? And it's something that we've actually been doing already since before the summer, right? Because we've been at this for quite a long time now. We've been talking to so many of them, and we've done hundreds of reports, and so we've learned quite a bit, and we've iterated already quite a bit, and we're going to continue to do that in the next weeks, months, and years. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Pretty confident. Okay, very good. Thank you, Jens. I think we can wrap up here. There's quite a few questions left in the comments, but we will share the slides afterwards with our contact details as well, so you can still get in touch with me or with Jens if you have more questions. Thank you, Jens, for all of the information on Cube. It was very interesting. I think it's a great entry point for companies, and
Yeah,
as said, not an end point. So thank you for that. And then I wish everybody a very good day and a good lunch.
thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.